The Bliss Girl asks, what do you think of the classification of cephalopods as sentient beings? And the answer is obviously that they are, but also I'm not sure whether the question you asked is the one you want me to answer. So I'm going to use this question as an excuse to talk about a bunch of terms that often get used kind of interchangeably, but in technical language have really specific different meanings. Sentience basically just means has senses. Humans are sentient, but so are dogs, crows, mice, salamanders, pufferfish, snails. Or to be a little more particular, it's usually used to describe things with a complex centralized system for receiving and interpreting sensory information, which still includes most of those things. I don't know about snails, but excludes things like sunflowers, which definitely sense and react to the sun, but don't seem to have a brain with which to interpret that information. Sapience is probably the word you meant, and colloquially sentience is used to mean this too, so if we're not being pedants about it, yours was an absolutely correct way to ask this question. Sapience is the ability to reason or think, and historically this is what philosophers often thought separated humans from other animals. But there's plenty of reason to think that there are other animals that are sapient, because they demonstrate having memory, communicating complex information to each other, and building social relationships. These include, but are not limited to, crows, dogs, apes, and yeah, cephalopods. We don't really have an extremely clear idea of what sapience actually is, though, and we don't have a direct way of detecting or measuring it, so it's not really reasonable to be certain. Consciousness often gets used interchangeably with sapience and describes having an experienced perspective. And honestly, we've barely got the beginnings of an idea what this is. I'm not even really convinced it exists. I think it's probably just a kind of hallucination. Personhood gets used interchangeably with all of these ideas at different times, but really it's mainly a legal concept. A person is a thing that has certain rights under the law. So this is where ideas come from, like corporations are people, because corporations are treated by the law as having personhood for the purpose of certain rights like property ownership. So in that sense, cephalopods are not generally people, but I would support a movement to recognize cephalopod personhood. Humanity gets used interchangeably with sapience and personhood a lot, but it really shouldn't, and using it that way is speciesist. What humanity really means is just whatever humans are like, and distinguishing between person and human can be really important for understanding what's actually going on in some sentences. Like, corporations are people does not mean corporations are human, and it would be wrong to recognize cephalopod personhood by asserting cephalopod humanity. I hope that cleared things up. Well, realistically, I know that it probably made them more confusing, but I hope it's a useful confusion that helps build scaffolding for later, more complex insight.